You're listening to the City Podcast. Unadulterated, non-politically correct, unfiltered, real talk. The city from the inside out. With your hosts, Chad Cranston and Steve Mealing.
All right, welcome back to the City Podcast. I'm Steve Mealing.
And this is Chad Cranston, and we have tonight the man in the house.
Well,
his name
is Ryan Kruger.
No, he's the man. We're going to call you the man. I'm hyping him up. This is the hype game.
Man?
I'm the hype
man. Are you
man.
Fiddy's hype man?
I'm the hype man.
It's
not 50 anymore, though. It's, what does it say? My name is Love. I think he called himself Love now. Yeah, that's right.
Jesus.
He said 50, right?
Pardon my English, but really?
Same guy.
Send all email complaints to at Chad Quarterly at Instagram.
Just don't troll me too hard on this one, because I know my hip-hop very well.
Oh, yeah.
I'll fucking roast all you motherfuckers. Okay, so tonight, this is special.
Your favorite still T-Pain?
Yeah, man. T-Pain's sick.
Okay, so listen.
Rad.
For those that don't know Ryan,
Yeah.
we're going to give Ryan a chance just to give you a quick update. So you might know him from Digital Dreams.
Possibly.
We're going to do the most recent stuff first.
Yep.
Ryan and I have known each other since 92.
Yes. Very early in the rave days.
Yes.
Pops.
So it'll kind of be a bit ravey,
Yeah.
but there's going to be all kinds of other talk because it's just real, as the kids say, 100.
100.
That means real talk.
Or we keep it real for 92.
Chad, that means real talk.
That's been real talk. Yeah. This is interesting.
So more or less, obviously you have a great new venture, which we're going to get into near the end. So everybody can get their information for tickets, the lineup, and even the concept behind it, because it's pretty incredible if you ask me.
Absolutely.
Compared to where we, well, you started a couple of years before me with Mayhem.
Yep.
Into the Destiny days.
Absolutely. And when we met, you were the guy who did our T-shirts.
Yeah, the first Destiny show.
That's right.
You guys were like, Mayhem
Dose
broke up.
logo on the back.
Yeah.
And the Destiny logo on the front.
I remember them all, buddy.
Yeah.
That's actually that was pre-Wayne, who's my brother.
Yes.
Who we brought in a couple of shows later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it started out. So the relationship started out
Yeah.
as, hey guys, we make these T-shirts. We'd love to work with you. You need any merch for your shows? I was like, absolutely.
We're selling stuff with Ecstatic. It kept selling out too, which was
Hey man, I
awesome.
remember the Ecstatic days. I was selling so many tapes.
Yes.
Like it was unbelievable. I did a mixtape once that sold like 5,000 copies.
Yeah. So that's not unusual.
No.
And people don't actually realize that.
No.
That's the weird thing.
We made more money. We made more money
Joy.
selling tapes than we made at the door at the parties.
Yeah, for sure. And that's back when it cost $20,000 to do a party.
Yeah,
And that's when-
DJs were $100 and nobody flew in.
Yeah. But anyway, so let's let's work
$20,000 is
our
still
way
a lot of
back to
cash.
that.
No, back in those days.
Yeah, when the cover is $5.
Yeah.
$10.
10, $15 actually.
Hey, we actually used to stand on the
Dusty.
side of the road we'd have a guy, it wasn't me. The
Yeah.
guy would stand on the side of the road at the meeting point with a black garbage bag, and that would be the meeting point. People would show up because they heard on the phone line that they had to call in and find out where the party was to go to the corner of like Front and Sherburne or whatever it might be. He'd literally be standing there with a garbage bag, throwing $20 bills into the garbage bag and giving people the final
Tickets,
destination.
yeah.
You
It
know
was
what?
Unbelievable.
In actuality, if you're talking 92, you're talking about like some kids that were just born. Or not even old.
Not even born.
Not
We
even
have people
born.
that come to our shows now that were born in 2000.
So my
Yeah.
question is, so how the hell did you guys get the word out in the streets back then? Because there's no social media.
No, there was no internet.
Well, you were-
The internet didn't exist.
Yeah, you
No
were
cell
actually,
phones,
well, it
no
existed,
text.
Well,
but not as we know. I had an email.
There was no World Wide Web.
No.
So there was
Remember
no
Matt from
advertising.
Interlog?
Yeah.
He was
you're
around,
right.
man.
Yeah, you're right.
So let's go back. That's actually
Not even
when
ICQ.
that's
No,
actually
nothing.
when people were promoters.
That's right.
So that's before. Actually, I didn't want to get into this later, but let's
Yeah.
talk about now.
Yeah.
That's actually when you started a company, i.e.,
Yeah.
Mayhem or Destiny.
Destiny. I joined Mayhem, but
Okay.
I created Destiny.
Yes, with Eric S. and
An algorithm.
yes, Jeff,
Yep.
and we were friends. That's how I met you.
Yep.
That's crazy. It's
Yeah.
been so long since I've heard Jeff's name. But what happened is you actually created a name for your company, and a following was based on people you knew, and
Yeah.
it bled from there. And you booked DJs that you wanted to represent the sound of your night. So the brand that you created of your party, this is an example of Destiny or Dose is what I did.
Yeah.
People came out to your shows because of you.
Yeah, they came
Flash
out.
forward now,
They come out for the name of the DJ.
they come out for the name of the DJ. So this is the actual promoter part that people actually don't even. Not to say people are stupid, they just don't realize because that's not how things are now.
Yeah, I mean, for us in the day, it was a particular sound that people followed. They would trust the brand name, like the Destiny name or the Dose name or whatever it was.
And that's before the brand and like lifestyle trend
Yeah,
and all
and-
that came about. We were developing that on our intuition.
Absolutely, and if I remember correctly, I mean, you guys were sort of the breaks company. We were the trance. We were the trance company, and then there was a drum and bass company with Cyrus. So everybody had a particular sound, and that's what people made their choices on more than the DJs or even the actual brand of the company. But the company helped. But it was actually the style of music that they liked is what they actually went for.
And so how you got your message across, what you wanted people to interpret your brand as, was through a flyer. Yeah. So you actually had a graphic designer come up with the cutting edge graphic designs, which at the time were like...
the 3D modeling, that you'd have to render that for like 3.5 days.
Yeah, how's that coming along? You call the guy and be like, just call me
It's
back
rendering, man. It's rendering.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, can you change the E? Really?
No,
you want me to change the fucking E?
No, not even a big problem.
Oh, dude, it'd be like 10 gigs of files.
Dude, it's like Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
They'd be fucking rendering a 3D graphic.
Remember when it was that stare at something for long enough, an image would pop out?
Yeah.
But if you just looked at it, it was just a bunch of different colors.
Well, the craziest thing is, and people ask about the same thing all the time, which is, the fact is you had no internet, so you weren't advertising anything online. Obviously, we weren't in a place where radio was even a possibility. I mean, that was well beyond our means. So, I mean, literally, it was a flyer.
Beyond our means.
Way beyond our means. So it was a flyer, and you literally had to hand those out hand to hand to every single person, and I had millions, I'm sure, millions
over the years.
But even the crazier part is we would develop a mailing list. Yeah, and that's how we got the word out to the masses, and not actually have to see them.
Entourage or Envoy?
No, not even that. This is even pre to that. I had like a Commodore 128. And people would leave their address at the end of our info line message, right?
Oh,
and I would scribble it
down,
piece of paper, type it into the Commodore 128, and when it was mailing list time, I'd print it all out on a dot matrix printer and literally fold a flyer, stick it in an envelope, and mail it
to each person.
Yeah, we took ours to Envoy.
Yeah, that was later though. So early, it was when we had a couple thousand. It was we could deal with it, and then we got to
holding them up,
put
them in.
Yeah, you had to always rope your girlfriend into it, and she'd fucking hate you, like all that kind of stuff. But we got to a point where I'm sure when we actually combined mailing lists for WEMF and stuff like that later. I mean, we had 30,000, 40,000 people that were getting a piece of paper in the mail from us.
So when you first started doing parties, how many flyers would you print?
Well, for the big stuff, I mean, for WEMF and stuff like that, we'd do...
No, when you first started out.
The first couple of like 50,000 would be a starting point.
And flash forward to the last...
The last time you really did flyers, like around 2,000 kind of thing, probably at least 250,000.
Yeah.
And those would all go hand to hand.
Hand to hand or mail.
Yeah, or mail.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and you'd have a team of people that stood outside of every nightclub in the city.
That's
every
how
party.
guest list came about. If you wanted to help, you help pack flyers into envelopes. Mm-hmm. You help stand in front of a venue and promote it. You added value to it. And what happened is that promoters, guys who were helping you, became part of your crew and your brand. So you would make merchandise for them to wear, and people would recognize them outside of you as that's their only point of impact for a Destiny. I got a Destiny flyer from Jim. Well, at the time it was for me. It was Aaron. Yeah. And you had Eric who did a lot of the stuff that he went out. So
I learned very quickly in life to not be the flyer guy.
Yes, 100%. Because what comes with people is they actually communicate with you about their excitement to go to the event.
Yep.
And then after the event, they find you at another event and vent all the things that they thought you did wrong.
I remember our flyers...
Which is a learning curve.
I remember our flyers used to be so big that people actually loved getting them because they know they'd be going to some dirty warehouse for the party. They could sit on them. They'd pick up a chair.
And we would clean up at the end of the night.
Someone would.
So what made you want to get into it in the first place?
Were you
DJing at the first?
No, that's the funny thing. So a lot of these guys that started throwing parties so they could DJ in front of people.
Yep.
For myself, I did become a DJ later, a couple of years after I started.
DJ OS2.
But the early days, I was in university. I had a job cooking somewhere, and just something I knew that I didn't want to do on an ongoing basis, and was trying to figure out a way to do something that I loved.
You're like 20 years old, right?
Yeah, exactly. 19 or 20 years old.
What the fuck do you know at 20?
Exactly. I knew I didn't want to work in the kitchen at 5 a.m.
There you go. One thing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, it came. I mean, my dad was in a band and still to this day is in a band. He's a country music legend out in BC, and he was always wondering, what's my musical, forte, right? Yeah. And I tried drums and I tried guitar and I tried saxophone and I sucked at all of them. And so I felt that this was my sort of entry into the music world and could kind of follow the family a little bit on that. And then eventually I became a DJ and I was actually decently good at it.
Yeah, he was.
And that was my music.
One of the better trance DJs in Toronto.
Yeah, and I spent
how many years on the road too?
Better part of 10 years, on an airplane Thursday, Friday, Saturday, every single weekend or most of them. Yeah, so I got to see the world for free.
100%.
And a good time, obviously.
Yeah,
There's so
definitely.
much
had a
to
good
be
time.
said about like the past that's different from today. Because
Let's get to today. Let's get to today because I knew you wanted to.
I had a lot of questions,
So
man.
Ryan and I were just speaking earlier, and I was like, okay, let's start out with talking about things that Chad can relate to, and people who don't have the history from the '90s.
Yeah.
So right away, it's not like oh fuck, two guys sitting reminiscing. Ryan's very relevant. That's why he's sitting here to a lot of people, actually thousands of people in Toronto. Right?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so.
You know what I mean? And you don't. You kind of forget about the '90s stuff until you actually go out and people come up to you and they thank you for things.
Yeah, they
right?
do all the time. It's interesting. People come up to us and they talk about the fact that they met their future
aren't
wife
you-
there.
aren't you
and all those
Ryan?
kind of things.
Are you
yeah,
Ryan? Yeah,
absolutely.
Ryan.
It
Yeah.
happens literally almost every week to this day.
Usually when I go out at one person.
Yep.
If we go out drinking.
Yeah. Random
he's been
people
with
too.
me too. It's weird.
They
Which
call
is
me-
awesome.
Calling you guys like legends. You guys are legends,
Well, or
man.
old.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't get old yet.
I think there was a quote once in Mix Mag, and it said I was the longest running rave promoter in North America, and this was probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, I
and
remember
all that
that
really
article.
made me feel was really old.
But the accolades are great. Like
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
like
you feel good. Hey,
it's a legacy.
so
that you-
let's
Put it this
get-
way: if you're gonna leave your mark on the world, you
Yeah.
want people to remember what you've done. And I think for sure I can always look back and say, hey, I did things that made people happy, and that is probably the most important thing.
right.
For all the accolades that Toronto's had over the years, it kind of went through a dip. So we'll talk about the '90s stuff later because Chad's got to leave us. He has an appointment a little bit later on. I wanted Chad's input on this because I wasn't hanging out with Chad when this was going on. We met through girlfriends at the time. But Digital Dreams came about after a long kind of dry spell by the standards that we know the rave scene to be in Toronto.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
It kind of died off. And
Very
then
much so.
the music festival scene popped up. And it was interesting because for Canadians and most of the States as well, there's only a few months you can actually do electronic music festival or any
Exactly.
kind of festival.
Yeah, anything
Summer
outside.
months. So with tradition, as we know from the past in the 90s, early 2000s, the larger DJs that you want to bring in, you can't compete with because why? Ibiza. So once again, Ibiza would steal all the talent. Ibiza's in Spain, and that's a destination where larger DJs
Yeah.
with followings would pick up residencies for the whole summer.
Well, the scene here was, it was also Europe. I mean, Europe's
Yeah.
festival season is the same time as ours, and they had a much more developed festival culture. And as we were, starting with WAMF and then even moving into Digital Dreams, I mean, when we got up to 80,000 people, it wasn't that difficult to get talent. But, in the early days
Getting
of
to
it,
that point,
Yeah.
you needed to have, that's kind of what I was trying to get at, is you needed to have somebody who actually has been around for a while, has the contacts, and could pull the bookings and say, like, here's my history.
Yeah.
So you ended up at Live Nation starting. Tell me how Electronic Nation came about.
Okay,
which is
so
interesting.
yeah, that came around. I joined Live Nation in 2011. So what happened was, as you mentioned, the rave scene as it was took a dip in the 2000s, and it was it was a wave, and through the 90s it got really big until about 2000 2001, and then it just died. Like, and this is North America wide. There was just nothing going on. We kept doing parties, but it was a side project. It wasn't our main focus anymore because you couldn't.
Couple thousand people.
Yeah, a couple thousand people.
But if you flash back to 91, 92, 93, 94, a couple thousand people was a big party, and the average.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here we are in the mid 2000s with a couple thousand people.
Yeah.
And it's a side project.
A side project, and then all of a sudden, I'm gonna give credit where credit is due. Dubstep came around, and it literally changed everything because once again, you had a music that would piss off the parents,
And it was
right?
entry level.
It was entry level. It was for younger kids. They loved it. It was really sort of dirty and different, and it really reinvigorated the scene. So I remember we booked Skrillex for one of our WAMP festivals back in 2011, and at the time we partnered with Embrace on it. And believe it or not, I think Kellen Harris was like three
I
or
remember that.
four names down.
Yeah.
He wasn't even the headliner at the time. But we booked Skrillex. Everybody's freaked. This is the year he just blew up. And all of a sudden, 10,000 people showed up or whatever it was. And it was right around that time that the festival scene North America-wide was starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Live Nation had taken notice. They wanted to do a test in Canada of owning their own electronic festival brand. So they approached me and said, hey, do you want to sell Destiny to us? And in doing so, you will now head this new division we're going to start called Electronic Nation. So through our first few events in the early 2012 and had been planning to do Digital Dreams. We brought in some of the biggest and best promoters in the club scene in Toronto to be partners in it. The guys at Unique and Capture and Balance, and obviously Destiny, people that had been there before the sale and all that kind of stuff. And we're able to put together this big thing at Ontario Place. Live Nation obviously having all the contacts, the location, all that kind of thing, made it a little bit easier.
So for those who don't know, Live Nation is the giant concert promoter who promotes almost all of the events
In the world.
Canada, but also in North America and globally. They're a global brand.
Yeah, the largest, not only the largest.
They also own
live
radio
music program, but
stations
they
and
own Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
They own like
They
100.
own Ticketmaster.
They own Ticketmaster. They merged
Yeah.
with them in the early days. They own about 150 amphitheaters across North America. They're the biggest in the world.
Yeah.
So this was all 2011, 2012. We launched this thing. We do Digital Dreams. It gets about 12,000 people the first year, 6,000 a day kind of thing in the first one.
So it's over 2 days, right?
Over 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. It's the biggest thing that's ever hit Toronto. Like no one's ever seen anything like it. Just prior to that, we'd actually done Dead
In
Mouse.
the downtown of Toronto.
In the downtown,
Outdoors.
in
That's
the
the
city,
thing
there's
that-
never been anything like
yeah.
it. And we had sort of proven the model a bit in November 2011, where we did Dead Mouse at the Rogers Centre. It was the first time the Rogers Centre had ever done an electronic event. We got 17,000 people out in the Rogers Centre for this. It was unbelievable, and it just proved the fact that there was a market. So Live Nation poured obviously quality money and got good people to be involved. And over the next 3 years, we grew it from 12,000 a day. I was mistaken, 12,000 a day. So we had 24,000 the first year. We had 20,000 a day the second year, so 40,000. And then the third year we did it, we had 40,000 a day,
So it doubled.
80,000. So it just kept going up and up and up. So yeah, no, that was the absolute crux of the explosion in Toronto. And then at the same time, Veld started out. And there was actually two competing events, which made each event better because each side was working really hard.
As we know, as old promoters, that's what like helps grow a scene. But everybody else who thinks they're loyal to a brand, they hate on the other brand out of loyalty. But the result really is that it helps.
Yeah, and even when we started that, and
that was Inc.
That was Inc. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
we started
Inc.
that.
And it almost went back to the old days where when I was curating the event and picking what kind of talent I was going to do and which stages would do what, we did something that was different than our competitors did.
Yeah.
We focused on different sounds, we focused on different types of artists, and we were able to create a niche that we were different than the others that were out there.
I think the real difference with Digital Dreams versus Veld was not only the players that were involved in producing the event, but the music itself, it still had an underground feel to it with the commercial EDM sound.
Yeah, I mean, we had
massive
obviously
crowd.
we had
So
the
you got
big EDM main stage,
Yeah.
but then we also had a drum and bass stage, and we
Yeah.
also had like a techno tech house stage, and we really tried to create that proper festival experience where you're able to go and experience different types of music all in one place, and that's kind of what a festival should be. It's like, yeah, I went to a club to see this DJ, or I went to a concert to see this band, but you get to see just that, and then you can keep doing that week after week after week at clubs, and you're really only going to see your own genre, right?
Yeah.
But you go to a festival and you may never have listened to drum and bass in your life because you're a 19-year-old kid that loves EDM. But all of a sudden now you walk around and you get to experience these different sounds, and you're like, oh wow, there's other stuff. And then it's over time, your tastes evolve. You become more experienced in the scene, and you start liking and going to different things elsewhere outside the festival world. So the festivals themselves are sort of the point where you get everybody in one place. They get to experience a variety of different sounds, and then after that, they're now supporting many more things than they were supporting prior to the festival.
Mm-hmm. Which is pretty amazing. So, and on the other side of the spectrum, Veld was kind of doing more of the bigger EDM sounds and some of the hip hop artists and bringing them in, as well as their staple and anchor, which was Dead Mouse.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much doing that only, aside for some club gigs at the government at the time, as his only festival appearance in Toronto, that's for sure.
Well, not only that, he had an interest in the festival itself.
Yeah. He partnered up, right? Now, one of the questions I noticed is that you guys did produce the Skydome show for him, right?
Yep.
How come he went to them instead of coming to you guys?
Well, straight up, because he was actually an owner. So I mean, at the end of the day, it was his. He was
I know he
part
did a
of the
song,
festival.
Veld, and that was his whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I've met him when he was first coming up. I'm not friends with him, don't claim to be. Super respect for what he's done.
Absolutely.
And, you know what I mean?
I mean, I remember
all the best luck in the world. However, for someone who claimed to have a better taste and was really critical of what was happening in the scene, and he's very vocal of it, it didn't really show as far as the talent and what they were pushing through that.
Yeah, I don't know that he had the final say on what was going on there, so I don't want to attribute anything to him.
No, but having a partnership, for example, we've done how many events together?
Many.
Exactly. And we all sat around a table and yelled out who we thought should be there. And because of our passion, that's what drove us back
Absolutely.
then, and which, got us to borrow 50, 100 grand from people.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? It's because of passion. Because if you look at it mathematically, you're just like, I have no way I'm doing this.
Yeah.
you figure that someone who's producing music would have an input. I know I'm not saying you know what he was thinking, but
I was not claim in any way to know how they choose and how they do. All I know is that when I do a show, I base it on what I would like to hear if I went to the show. So even with the EDM stuff, we're the people that brought Eric Prydz in and stuff like that, where they're playing main stage, but they're not quite the pop star kind of side of things. They are still they've got sort of some deep credibility as well. So we would try. It would not be the Moneyball version of festivals, which a lot of people do. They're like, okay, how many albums have they sold? How many
Just go to Polestar and look at the results.
There's obviously value in Moneyball. It worked in baseball and it worked in the music scene too. And hey, you can't argue with success. But that is not the route that we took to success. We took the more, I think, the more cultured version of curation, where we were choosing artists that had some sort of
impact,
and they did something that was important within the music scene, as opposed to just being a pop star.
Yeah, they left a footprint.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
You look at the catalog; they've been around and they know what they're doing. Not to say that others don't, but there's history there.
Yeah. But if you look at and I think the other way you can kind of, I don't want to get this to this is what we did, this is what they did kind of conversation. But,
no, it's not about that.
But it very quickly became the fact that we got people that were 21 to 40, and they got people that were 18 to 25, and that was strictly by musical choices. And obviously, there was a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds that wanted to go out, that looked at us and go, I don't know a lot of those guys, so I'm going to go to this one, and vice versa.
My dad listens to that stuff. My dad looked at this flyer and said, "You should go check. I want to go check out that." So I didn't go. I went to Veld.
Well, literally, it did two different crowds.
Yeah, it is, obviously there's crossover, but I would say the 50% of the people that went to either show probably didn't go to the other.
Right.
Which allows two large events to coexist without sort of cannibalizing each other.
Mm-hmm. And so you didn't ever see this as a competition. You said that this is actually a compliment to one another, no matter what.
I wouldn't say didn't see it as competition, but we saw it as healthy competition. So yes, of course we would make strategic choices based on what others were doing in the scene, whether it would be that or many other events that were happening. But we chose what we wanted to do based on what we felt was the best possible show we could put together, not strictly reactionary against what someone else was doing.
Right. Or sitting down in a corporate office space.
Yeah. It'd be interesting because, when I would be talking to agents and managers and so forth and trying to book the show for 6 months leading into when we announced stuff, we would
bidding. I tried to outbid others.
But that was the good thing, I think, in Toronto to a degree, is that we weren't really bidding on the same people. Yeah, there may be 10 or 20% of the top guys we'd probably be cross paths, but almost everything else we weren't really bidding against Toronto people. We were bidding against Miami or LA or New York or Chicago. So that actually worked in our favor. The other thing that was great was that because we were on Canada Day.
I was just going to say that.
Because we were on Canada Day, not only do we have a great location, and thanks to Live Nation for obviously making that possible, because that's where their amphitheater is, but Ontario Place was a great location in downtown Toronto. It wasn't a field out in the middle of nowhere.
That's the thing that actually surprised me.
Interesting.
Is that I remember when I came down and saw you on the first year, I was like, this is awesome. And you were like buzzing around and you were excited. Yeah. Understandably. And I was excited for you guys.
Yeah, so just to finish that thought. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
sorry, I just took off.
But we because Canada Day was when it was, it made perfect sense to do it on Canada Day because it was a long weekend. But the point is that EDC, which is to this day still the biggest electronic music event in the world in Las Vegas, was a week or 2 weeks before, depending on the year. And
they were still in North America.
They're still, but July 4th, the American holiday, was always the next weekend. Mm-hmm. So we had this little window of time that we didn't have a ton of competition other than other Canadian cities. And being Toronto, people are gonna choose Toronto over Ottawa or Winnipeg or Edmonton.
For sure, especially on a day like that.
Yeah, of course.
But sorry, I rudely interrupted you there. I was surprised when I saw you there. The first thing I thought of was, this will work. It's gonna grow, but are they going to be able to utilize the amphitheater? And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, who would I suggest to Ryan to bring in? I was like, that'd be a great space for Prodigy to play.
Yep.
That'd be a great space for
Chemical Brothers. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And or Daft Punk or whatever.
Yeah, so on, because it just doubles the capacity almost.
And it's actually what they did at Ultra in Miami when they were working around the amphitheater, right?
They just tapped into
it. And we often looked at that as an option to increase our capacity. Not that we ever really needed more capacity, even when we had 80,000 people, but we could never either land or get the act that would actually make sense to put in a seated amphitheater. Because we're promoting dance music.
Yeah.
The biggest part of dance music is that you dance. So if you're sitting in a seat, it's not quite the same thing.
Well, even up until the whole festival thing really taking off, when we were doing events in the past, getting a big artist, like we did get Daft Punk to come play for us. We did do the Chemical Brothers show.
Yep.
Actually, the first one in Canada. Fuck, that sold out in like a minute and a half. Crazy. Anyways, the thing is that they looked at our market, and you know this from your experience, as why would we waste a Saturday?
Yeah, especially in the summer.
I know that there's
European festival season.
Yeah, you have a big enough following there that we can put you booking in on Tuesday, and we'll sell out.
Yeah.
So it kind of robbed Toronto of the experience of some of those bigger bands.
Yeah, and I would say we might have had a chance at them in the first couple of years we did Digital Dreams, simply because the scene globally was growing at that point, but it wasn't massive in North America yet. But by the third year, when we really had the funds and the budget to go after the Chemical Brothers or Prodigy or Daft Punk or anything, and we did.
Yeah.
But we'd always get beat out by some massive festival in the U.S. or
With
Europe.
a close tie or something like that. So you know who I was kind of surprised, and this is not to go the gossip route, but I was kind of surprised to see that Sneak never kind of made his way in through you guys, through Gavin. Because I know that, again, it's not a gossip thing. And the reason why I'm asking is because he was one of the guys that actually helped us get our talent, even though we had to pay the guy, through his European connections. And he's still so big in Europe.
Yeah.
And, he's part of the foundation for house music.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised I didn't see that.
I mean, personally, I don't think that there was.
Not looking for an.
No. I mean, the answer would be that when I was doing it, I'd never really booked Sneak in the past, right?
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, I used to curate these shows based on the stuff that I either had history in or that I liked or wanted to hear. And it wasn't that I didn't want to hear Sneak; just I really had no past history with him, and so he wasn't the priority on my personal list. Only for that reason. Yeah. So, there was nothing more to it than that. There was no grand conspiracy. It was just,
no, I'm not suggesting, actually. My grand conspiracy is coming up. The next question is saying, so...
But before we go that direction, was the Sneak hitting AVICII at that time? Didn't he get a residency in AVICII?
He's had that's the whole point, is that he's had those residencies.
Did he not want to leave that?
I have no idea. Yeah. I can't answer that question. I know that we didn't really try, but, so I can't really tell you one way or the other why.
So let's hit this.
There's a lot of stories behind that, because I also...
remember when I started by saying I don't want gossip?
And I remember that. Okay. I kind of remember, because I was in Ottawa at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you guys were the guys bringing Sneak to Atomic at that time.
No, that was my friend Billy. And,
Billy Melnick. Yeah. So Billy Melnick was bringing a Sneak almost every 3 months. Yeah. And I guess Martin Villeneuve, if I stand correct, would be the guy that opened for Sneak. Those are the two main headliners.
Yeah.
But then things start transpiring in Ottawa at that time, where he just disappeared. And it's just Martin Villeneuve, and then other artists were coming in. We never did Chemical Brothers. Wasn't big enough to do Chemical Brothers, but he disappeared. I mean, we're talking about it.
So but there's a reason for that. We don't want to get into the gossip side of things.
Yeah,
right.
That's
interestingly, you bring up Ottawa because a very good friend of mine named Ali is one of the.
Remember Ali from back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day. So, it may not be the same Ali, but Ali used to work with me when I was a president of a company called Breakaway Tours. And he went on, and he was always throwing events. And
did he form Escape?
Escapade.
So
that was as we were talking about earlier, having competition on the same dates and things like that around North America. Escapade was on Canada Day in Ottawa, because obviously Canada Day in Ottawa makes sense. But we realized very early that, hey, we're friends. Let's have an open conversation about who we're going to book, so that we're not driving up prices and just making agents and DJs rich. So we would almost do a draft. And we'd sit there and go, okay, I want this guy. Okay, I get this guy. We'd go back and forth, and we'd have the laundry list of who we're going to make offers to.
He used to work with them, and he ends up doing something like that as well.
And they've done very well with it up there. I mean, the market is, it'll only go to a certain level because it's Ottawa, but they've done very well with it.
But it's still going as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is kind of what I wanted to try. Let's push things in one certain direction here, is that you doubled for the first 3 years.
Yep.
And then what happened?
Then I made a decision that I wanted to move on.
Yeah.
Precipitated by a deal that had been done at much higher levels than my pay grade. That changed the dynamic of how Electronic Nation was going to proceed or not proceed. And I wasn't happy with the situation. But it was not, a a really bad breakup or anything like that. I just made a decision that I didn't want to be involved anymore, and
So you left.
I left.
And who came in? Actually, so was it a handoff?
No.
Let's just be honest about it. So you left. I know what happened.
Yeah.
The people on the other end may quite not know. I know he doesn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'm not even sure what I can talk about and can't talk about, but obviously from what anybody can see on the street is that Live Nation did a deal with Inc. So that there was a sharing of both Veld and Digital Dreams between the two of them,
And the producing of the event.
and the producing of the events. I can't really comment on why or how that deal came about. The bottom line was that it made no sense for me to continue doing what I'm doing. And I was, at that point, I'd done what I set out to do. I'd created the largest electronic festival in the history of Canada.
Yeah.
I'd actually built the largest stage in the history of Canada.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say the Bud Light massive stage. That thing was fucking ridiculous.
It was absolutely insane. And it was funny, we had the owners of Ultra up there that year, and they're looking around the main stage and like, hey, this is the same stage we used for the Ultra main stage. Yeah, but we actually expanded on it and made it even bigger. We had like
Put one more row.
like 150 LED screens throughout the whole thing. It was insane. So anyway, the bottom line is I absolutely loved the 4 years that I was there. Had a great time. Did everything I wanted to do. I'm still to this day the only person to ever do electronic events at the Rogers Centre. I did 4.
Yeah.
Of which we got to over 30,000 people with the AVICII show that we did there. So,
you did AVICII, Dead Mouse, and the Sensations, right?
And no, one Sensation. Then after that, they moved over to SFX.
Yeah.
And then I also did the one last tour for Swedish House Mafia there.
Okay, that's right.
So, and to this day, I was the first one to do one there, and there hasn't been one since I left.
I don't think there'll be one for a while, to be honest with you.
No, I mean, under the previous ownership of Rogers Centre, not ownership, sorry, of management of the Rogers Centre, they made a decision internally not to do anything that was all ages. So, Sensation could have potentially come back and continued there, but they, all the other shows that we've done there, like Dead Mouse and AVICII, I mean, those were attracting 16, 17, 18-year-olds in mass, and that's how we were able to do 30,000 people. But, when they made the decision, not all ages, pretty hard to fill the Rogers Centre with 30,000 19 plus. I mean, it's not an easy thing. So that ended. So, I filled the Rogers Centre 4 times. I'd done Digital Dreams 3 times. I'd done, the World Trade Center, the Convention Center, the Convention Center down on Front Street.
Armin.
For Armin van Buuren. So, I'd done all the things that I kind of wanted to do.
Who were your partners in Digital Dreams then? So let's cut to the chase on that. You guys were partners with several, I don't know what the arrangement was, but I do know that when Inc. came in and took over, there was a big uproar between, and you know what, it's not a matter of, it can't be a secret because all these promoters that were involved and felt they had a partnership, whether it was or not, you can disclose that, were all up in roars and something went sideways and they felt like it were done wrong, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, hey, once again, I don't know that I should probably go into the nitty-gritty of it all. At the end of the day, it was not, in my opinion, it was a strange decision. And I can elaborate on what happened as a result of it. But at the end of the day,
that's what I'm looking for.
All of the promotional partners in Digital Dreams also ended their relationship with Live Nation, and that was the Unique guys that owned a bunch of nightclubs and restaurants in Toronto. Same with Capture nightclubs and restaurants, and Balance, who were great promoters, and obviously my Destiny team that had come along with me. So ended up leaving, and
did you take the Destiny brand with you?
Part of my exit was that I got the Destiny brand back. Which was great.
Absolutely.
And funny enough, my thought was when I was leaving was that I was actually going to go and work for SFX.
I laughed. I don't know why anyone would want to.
Yeah. Well, at the time they had gone public. Yeah. But in the time between when I left and when I was about to take the position there, they started having financial issues and ended up going bankrupt.
Yeah.
They lost hundreds of millions of dollars. So,
due to bad management.
Yeah, I didn't leave to join them.
100%.
It just happened to be an offer that I had when I did leave.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening is I started my own consulting firm, which in the end is kind of what I wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
To essentially run either my own brands or to consult and manage other large scale festivals around the world. And quite quickly, I got together with the guys from Robot Heart, which is probably the coolest stage at Burning Man. Yeah. And
which you've been going through since the early mid-90s.
11 of the last 12 years, yeah. So the Robot Heart guys made me a great offer to work with them and produce this new festival in Las Vegas called Further Future, which was a massive undertaking. And this was something that had not only a great music festival component to it that followed sort of the genre of Robot Heart with sort of really deep house and all that kind of stuff, but also they had like TED Talk level speakers with people like, you know, the chairman of the board of Google and all that kind of thing. They had Nick Nobu and the Larchmont Cafe and other big restaurants in the US serving sit-down dinners in the middle of a dusty desert. They had great tech going on there, like that female robot that Saudi Arabia just made a citizen.
Yeah.
They actually had that sitting on the business.
Yeah.
So these guys just knew everybody. Like they were all big tech guys who had unlimited Rolodexes and lots of bank accounts,
funds as well.
unlimited funds, and that was a great thing to do for a couple of years. And then just recently, so that's the last 2 years, and then this last year, which is since the third year since I left. I've done a number of things, but my new sort of passion project at the moment is something called Vujade, and it's our new 5-day music festival in Barbados, and it's another great.
So who'd you partner up with?
Yeah, I
on
was going
that?
to say another great group of people have come together to do that. If you guys are familiar with Embrace, Embrace is a partner on that, as well as Coda. And through Coda,
Coda the club?
Coda the club, but also Coda the partner in Electric Island and Paradise in the Park and all these
Used to
different
have
things.
footwork, right?
Yeah, and
Right,
footwork.
right, okay.
But also, they were also the founders of the SXM festival down in Saint Martin. So they had
They
left.
killed that, did they? Or did they
Well,
just leave it?
Mother Nature killed that,
Yeah.
but unfortunately there was a hurricane. But that was actually after the fact. They ended up leaving SXM to join me in this venture because they thought it was a great idea, and that's what we're all really focused on right now.
So what kind of music you guys have together?
For Vuja Day, I
Yeah.
mean, you know, we can get to why we made the choices we do, but I think you can relate it back to the fact that I want to do exactly what I would want to do.
Yeah.
Right. So
like
it's,
an
if I
experience
was going
that
to
you
go
would
to
like to go to.
yeah, if I'm going to get on an airplane and go somewhere, this is what I would go to.
So
Right? So it's
kinda
deep house, tech house, sort of a wider net house music festival. So you could say it's somewhat similar to BPM or SXM, both of which weirdly are not happening this year, and it wasn't what our plan was when we started doing it, but it just happened.
It's good filler.
But hey, it turned out to be an interesting time to be starting a festival in the Caribbean, and it's going well, and
So it's underway right now.
well, yeah, it's in April. It's April 4th to 8th in 2018. But we're on sale. We've got a lineup out. People are loving it, and it's going very well.
They just released the lineup for it. So it's a good promo time for Ryan,
Yeah.
a promoter at heart.
Yeah, VujaDayMusicFestival.com.
Vujade.
How do you spell that?
Vujaday, it's VUJADAY.
VUJ.
ADAY. And the name itself is one of the coolest, and I'm not going to take credit for it. Actually, Monica in my office came up with the name, but I will tell you, when she said it, it was like we were looking for festival names, and we're going through the thesaurus and all these kind of things, and trying to find
Like
something
you do.
cool, like you do.
Yeah.
Looking in the back of old mix mags and looking for names, that
Drive
kind of thing.
around,
Yeah.
make it shit.
And she just said, "What about Vujade?" And I was like, "What does that mean?" She goes, "It means like something you've never seen or felt before." Because
deja
vu
vu,
means
yeah.
like something you've seen or have felt before.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that if you're going to think of the perfect festival name, let's think of one that says, "Hey, this is what this is. Something like you've never seen or felt before."
Did you give her a partnership?
She is still with me today.
So who's headlining?
We've just done our phase one. So I would say in a festival like this, I don't look at it as the same as the old school where it's all, this is the headliners, this is the B level thing. Like we put together a curated lineup that makes sense top to bottom. And from a phase one perspective, we have people like, Art Department, Bedouin, Wolf and Lamb. There's the names go on and on and on.
But Bad One's kicking ass.
Oh, absolutely!
They're all-
One of my personal faves. Like, it's funny because when the other guys come to my office, they're like, "How do you literally live this 24/7?" Because I've got like deep house playing in the office and I'm listening to it all day long, and I'm throwing shows with
Especially
it.
to get
And I
into it.
really love it. So it's my passion.
Right.
It's kind of not work anymore.
Exactly.
Except for when you lose money.
Well, hey, it's festival business. You always lose
exactly.
money, but it leads to my answer when anybody asks me. They go, the first question anybody in North America tends to ask you is, "What do you do?" So my answer is always, "I sell fun.
Yeah.
I sell fun,
True
and
enough.
that's what I do."
So what do you say to somebody, not a guy or girl, but some person, got to remember it's 2017, if they want to be a promoter, what do they do to start out and how do they get out? From your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just like a band, there's no such thing as an overnight success. And especially in this business where it's a very small group of people who do this, either in your city that you're in or anywhere in the world, it's a relatively small amount of people, and it's people that have done it for many, many years. So you have to get into this business knowing that you start small and you slowly work your way up the chain. Anybody who tries to come in like a hurricane, so
or like Utopia.
yeah,
But anyways,
but if you try and come in and try and be bigger than you are, without the right connections, without the right promoter support network, without the mailing lists, without the big Facebook page, without all that kind of stuff, and try and create independent credibility, it's impossible. A perfect example would be Fire Festival. Ja Rule invited me down to a dinner in Las Vegas when I was there last year, and had a conversation with me, and had somewhat asked me if I would like to be involved in the event, and I was asking all the right questions of what you should ask for something like this, and the answers were just they were not the answers to the questions that I were asking were not the right answers, and right there and then, before 3-4 months before it happened, I knew there was going to be problems. So I didn't think it was going to be to the extent that they had problems, but you could already tell that they weren't focusing on the right things because they'd never done it before. Right. And that's the key of this. You have, like anything else, you have to fail to know, and you have to fail often to get better at what you do. I mean, the very first WEMF we ever threw back in the 90s. I mean, which stands for World Electronic Music Festival.
Yeah, was there one in Detroit too?
That was DEMF. They were after us. We came up with the word first.
Yeah.
Okay. And
sorry, the acronym.
The acronym, yes. And
great clothing line, by the way.
And that very first show, I had to put a lien on my education funds, and I had to put a $30,000 bond on the street signs leading into the event because they thought that the city thought that all the kids were going to steal all the street signs. And at the end of the day, we got hit by a tornado, and it literally destroyed the event. Luckily, we were able to set half of it back up the next day and continue. But
it was Joel and the crew.
There's Joel and the crew from Westbury. Definitely did a fantastic job. And we thought our lives were over. But luckily, it goes out on the radio that this thing just got hit by a hurricane or a tornado, and it's still going, and you got to go. And all of a sudden, all these people showed up, and it saved it. Still lost our shirts, but I got my $30,000 back because every street sign in the neighborhood got knocked down. And it wasn't my fault.
And it wasn't one single raver.
So in the business aspect of things, the insurance policy on this, and every dynamic, whether it's weather related, whether it's health related, or whatever have you, fire, all that kind of stuff. Is that a major proponent to whether you're going to be able to lay down money, get investment on it? So if you're asking for, say, $100,000 on this, are they going to ask you, so what's your insurance policy like on this?
Well, of course.
What's our return for the investment that we're making as well, too?
Well, of course, you have to have general liability in the $5 to $10 million range.
You're getting investors.
Yeah, well, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
That's what it depends
on the show. Because, they approached you, Fireworks approached you, and you are technically an investor in this.
No. They approached me to help. Produce the event. Yeah, it was more of a hiring of a firm. But at the end of the day, I didn't, and it didn't progress very far. It was simply one conversation where I knew I wasn't going to continue the conversation. But to answer your insurance question, yeah, absolutely, you can get weather insurance that will pay if a certain amount of wind hits and a certain amount of rain falls, and you can't, you safely cannot open, or you have to close early, or whatever it is. But that kind of stuff is extremely expensive. Like we're talking in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hold on a second. Didn't a certain event not happen because of weather in Toronto recently?
It might have been Digital Dreams.
Oh, that's right, Digital Dreams.
Was it you guys? Or
no, it was after I left. It was funny because not funny. I never want to make bones on somebody else's hardship. And at the end of the day, they did their best.
They must have actually made money on that because of their insurance.
Well, the thing about insurance is it's not like it's paying you a profit. Insurance covers your costs.
Yeah, but the liquor sales on top of that.
But it's a portion.
Yeah.
A portion. So in the end of the day, they probably didn't lose as much as they would have lost had there not been that situation. But they certainly didn't, do well because of the situation. But like I said, if you're not a major promoter...
Ticket sales were pretty slow for that one too, I think.
Well...
It might have helped that the storm happened.
Well, hey, it might have. The years since I've been there, it went from 80,000, I think, down to less than 20 this past year. So, that's over the 2 days too. And is that because of the weather? And then everybody just got scared of going? Did it happen because they weren't curated the same as it was in the past?
It's a bizarre lineup, wasn't it?
It was.
Oh wait, no. This is the year that they changed it from Digital Dreams. Last year was Digital Dreams. This year they changed it to Dreams Festival, 19 plus only.
Yeah, 19 plus only, Friday, Saturday instead of Saturday, Sunday. Once again, I'm not at the table. I don't know why the decisions were made.
So when you left it was thriving.
It was thriving.
There we go. Okay, so back to WEMF.
Yes.
the precursor to all of Digital Dreams and any other event on a larger scale that's happened. What made you come up with the concept of doing the World Electronic Music Festival?
It's funny, actually.
Because you know what, as a promoter,
Yes.
I'm going to say this. A lot of people may not even think about this. Putting together an event is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Putting together a 3-day event, not a 2-day event,
Yeah,
but
3
a
days.
3-day event is more than a lot of
Well,
work.
not only, I add on
It's
top
kind
of
of
that,
like you're
the camping and everybody's staying with you. They're not coming in each day and leaving.
the amenities and everything, the
Yeah.
food. You got to think there's so many things that a lot of people might overlook, and it's through your experience that you kind of get it right.
Yeah, we definitely did a lot of things wrong at the beginning, and each year we got a little bit better.
But everybody helped out at the same time
Yeah.
because of the scene and where it was at. It was more of a family.
Yeah. And
the
hey,
lack
we
of a
did
better
it. We did it for
description.
17 years.
Yeah.
And we got pretty good at it by the end. But every year we still learned something, how to make it a little bit better the next year.
So
The
why
big
did you
things
end
got
up-
solved early, but the little things took
Yeah.
longer.
How to get lines, just the whole thing. It's a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Essentially, when you're creating a city, which is what you're doing, if you have 20,000 people coming out and living there for 3 days, you're essentially creating a city, right? You have to have the same things that a city. You have to have, policing. You have to have facilities for bathrooms and cleaning. You have to have
Place for security to
you have to
stay.
have parking. You have to have all sorts of things that the laundry list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
But throwing a party in a nightclub, you walk in, you turn the lights on, and people come in, they go out. I mean, it's not that hard.
Oh no, wait! You put up some
You
decorations.
put up some decorations, someone puts up some decorations.
Hey guys, I got to step out.
Okay.
This is just like, how it goes. Fuck, I wish I had more time to talk about this because there's so many questions to ask.
That's all right. We'll get to the meat and potatoes, and then
Yeah.
Ryan will come back a little.
You're gonna have to come back at a later time, and you're down south.
or maybe we'll just go
after
down
April.
and do one
Hey,
down there.
got a
awesome.
recording from down in Barbados.
That'd be amazing, actually. That'd be amazing because I've never been, and I'd love to go.
Yeah.
And it'd be a good time because I know you're gonna show us a really good time.
Absolutely.
down there.
Ryan?
Ryan. Okay, boys, I got to step out.
I saw fun.
Chat out.
All right.
So, interestingly enough, a lot of people don't realize the depth of actually doing the 3-day event, and that's kind of really what Destiny was known for. Aside from the solid trance music,
Yeah, the WEMP was our calling card for
Yeah.
because we were the first in Canada to do a multi-day event, and,
Yeah.
and we ran it the longest. So prior to Digital Dreams and Beld and a few things here, there, and everywhere, nobody was doing what we were doing for many, many years. And if they were doing it, it was like 2,000 people in Saskatoon. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like it wasn't anything that was the
what
usual.
was Shambhala?
Shambhala was probably the only thing that was close to what
Yeah.
we were doing out in BC.
Yeah.
And
That's a different vibe altogether.
Yeah,
right there.
but it's BC vibe. I DJ'd enough in BC to know the difference between here and there, right?
I've walked around the streets of Vancouver enough times going, "Where's the after party?"
No,
To know, there's no.
there's no after party.
Once check moved,
Yeah.
there's no after party.
No, we often have. I mean, I'm from Vancouver Island and Winnipeg, but
Pegger.
the Pegger. But Winnipeg's a place you leave. But I also grew up on Vancouver Island.
Funny enough, I think actually Robin Black's from just not too far from. I was telling you earlier, not too far from the Pegger. A lot of people I know from Winnipeg are actually solid people. They're good.
I went to
Salt of the earth.
private Jesuit boys' school in Winnipeg for high school.
Jesuits. Ooh.
So a heavy Catholic school there. Catholic schools weren't supported, so it was a good school. It had like a 99% university placement rate. And
That's pretty high.
To this day, when we have reunions, there's more people at the Toronto reunion than there is at the Winnipeg reunions because once again,
Success.
they
Yeah.
leave. There's no real reason. As much as Winnipeg's my original hometown, and I go back and I see a few friends every now and then. I look around when I'm there, and I'm just like, there's no amount of money you could pay me to want to live here. Unfortunately,
Toronto's your home.
Toronto is definitely my
Like you text me earlier because we were trying to coordinate what time to be here, and there's a fucking bus in front of you. I was just my response was, "It's Toronto."
It's Toronto.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
One day it takes you 10 minutes to get halfway across town. The next day it's an hour and a half. Same time. Doesn't make any sense.
I live downtown. I live on the water, and my office is Queen and Spadina. And about a year ago, I just decided not to drive anymore. And it would take me half an hour to drive the 5-minute drive, or I could ride my bike and be there in 10 minutes. So
I park on the weekends too.
Yeah,
especially in the weekends. You can't without wanting to kill
weekends,
someone.
7 days a week.
Well.
Driving up to play hockey at Downsview, which is as you know up north. If I have an 8:00 game, I gotta leave at like 6:30. Like it's still rush hour at 8:00. It's unbelievable.
I don't, we can go on and on about it. But I love the city. Toronto's my home.
Hey, and I always rode my bike for fun. A road bike, mountain bike, all that kind of stuff. So I was an avid biker, but I wasn't a ride to work kind of biker.
No, cyclist, you mean?
Cyclist. Let's call it cyclist. And over the last, let's say 2 years of riding, like now I'll ride till literally there's snow on the ground. Like I'll probably do 9 months of the year on the bike, and I get everywhere. I'll go to a meeting at St. Clair and Yonge. I'll go and I'll be there in 10 minutes. I ride home. I'm there in 5 minutes. Like it's such a better way to get around the city.
Well, so I agree with you. And it was kind of funny. I was thinking about you the other day when last week, actually, when I was driving through the Etobicoke area. One second.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for going to the fridge for me. I appreciate that.
No worries. The fridge is probably right there in the studio. In the early 90s, we had no problems finding venues.
Well, the reason we had no problem finding venues was because Toronto was in a recession, and you had about 1,000 warehouses in the downtown core that literally would rent it to you just to be able to pay the rent, not only the rent, but
Okay,
the heat.
what's the cheapest that you ever? I'll stay on topic after this.
Yeah.
What's the cheapest you ever paid for a venue?
Well, I mean, if we're
Warehouse.
talking a large,
Not for a Destiny Friday night,
No.
which was an awesome, longest running Friday night in Toronto.
Yeah.
Yada yada
I
yada.
mean, I don't remember exactly, but I mean, I remember sort of
$1,000.
maybe more than that. I think like you're a
$1,500.
big place, $2,500, that kind of thing. Which if you're putting a couple thousand people in some places is pretty good.
Yeah, well, the reason why I was asking is because I remember thinking about this earlier today. I was like, what am I going to ask Ryan? I was like, it's funny enough. One of the more legendary parties that we've done, for lack of putting two words together to make better sense, was at 393 King when we did the underground parking garage, 3 floors.
Yeah.
We went through that venue, booked it because it was an office building.
Yeah, which is now I believe condos because I've been at somebody's condo in that. At the time, it was like literally a ghost tower.
It was crazy.
Right on King Street.
And 2 weeks before us, Cyrus ended up throwing a party.
Yeah.
And they booked that same venue.
Yeah.
So we went back to the owner. We're like, "What the fuck?" The week of Cyrus' event, we found out, and he was like, "Oh, he didn't want to lose the booking," and it was like $1,500. And he goes, "Well, I like blah blah blah," and somehow we ended up talking about the underground parking garage, and we ended up renting it from him. And because it was underground and it was an inconvenience, we paid $1,000.
And didn't you have to have fans to blow oxygen into the thing? Like people, people would have been dying down there.
But present day, like for the past 10 years, it's been pretty crazy real estate in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I've noticed in the past couple months, driving through the Etobicoke area, that a lot of warehouses are popping up for rent.
Yeah.
And the bigger side of things. And that's what I was thinking. I was like, fuck, I should tell Ryan about this. And I was like, wait a sec, this kind of sounds like flashback 20 years ago it's 20 years.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So
You would be super excited about it.
Yeah. Well, the issue now is that because of the internet. I mean, it's a double-edged sword sometimes. But because of the internet and the way that we promote and the fact that every authority under the sun is probably on our mailing list and all that kind of thing.
You're following your Twitter feed.
The old days when you just do a warehouse and wouldn't tell anybody where it was, and then at that point
put it on your phone line the night of after 9 or 8.
The authorities for the most part didn't work on the weekends. The police weren't out there to shut you down. They were more to enforce laws. The zoning people.
Is that what you called that?
The zoning people weren't out on Saturday night. So if you could get to Saturday, you were pretty much assured you'd be okay.
Yeah. For the most part.
For the most part. We obviously had our moments.
Weird enough, yeah.
Yeah, but funny that you bring this up because this past Halloween, we did a show called Forever 99.
I do remember talking about this in the summer with you.
The whole idea is that it's a throwback 1999 rave. And we did it at the 401 Mini Indy, the indoor go-kart track that everybody sees as they're driving down the 401 near the airport. And we had Prozac, who was
I remember
the 90s CanCon masters, and and they were a partner in the show. And we also brought back some DJs that are still relevant today, but were around back then. Christopher Lawrence, Green Velvet,
and some drum and bass acts as well.
Yeah, Mickey Finn, unfortunately, who didn't make it. But at the end of the day, we tried to sort of make it about 1999. And it was like 1999. We had like a big tent outside,
I saw
portalets, and 2,500 people show up for a throwback rave. I mean, that's super cool.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I saw some pictures from Instagram. I actually plan on going up there, and then things kind of went sideways on my end.
This kind of goes to your first point, which is I'm starting to see some warehouses popping up in Etobicoke and things like that. So for the last, let's just say decade, but it's probably even longer, since the big parties, unless they were in the government or the warehouse or at the docks, or Sound Academy or Rebel or whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, there hasn't really been parties out in the boonies anymore. The Etobicoke, North York, Vaughan, like places like we used to look at because, that's where there was availability. People just aren't willing to travel anymore. So we were really, let's say, trepidatious of doing something that far away, right? And we were even, should we do buses and all these kind of things? But, at the end of the day, people wanted to have that 1999 experience. And, it was great. The cars, the go-karts ran all night, the mini putt, the arcade.
What time did you guys go to?
Let's say 4 a.m.-ish.
So let me ask you this then. What's your definition of a rave?
You know what? A rave doesn't have a definition. At the end of the day, a rave, used to mean, an abandoned warehouse and sort of a semi-legal or gray area kind of party, right? I mean, the days of the actual rave are long gone. No one breaks into warehouses and throws parties anymore.
That was in the late 90s when we actually had to start using legal venues.
Yeah. So the actual term of a rave, where it was just sort of this sort of, back alley kind of experience that you were never really sure if it was legal or not, and that gave it its mystique. That's gone. At the end of the day, we're getting legal venues, we're getting permits, we're getting all the proper security and dealing with all the fire issues and all those kind of things. So it kind of had the feel of a 1990s rave, but at the end of the day, it was a completely legal experience. But it felt like it.
I wasn't actually taking the angle to the 99 rave. I was just thinking about talking, like I'm single, so I'm out and about. Mm-hmm. And I talk to a lot of mid-20 girls. And with their thought, hearing someone say to me, yeah, I'm going to a rave next weekend. Yeah. I'm like, oh, well, where are you going? What's the thing? And it's in a club, and it's like a small club that holds 100 people, and some guy with a laptop. Yeah. In my mind, I'm just like, I get frustrated. But I don't. You know what I mean? I'm just like, you have no idea. And at the same time, you kind of want,
it's like your parents talking about Woodstock. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, that's
what I was going to say. I don't want to kind of correct it and say, well, back in the day, here, I'll show you some pictures. See this guy, you don't even know.
See those 27-inch cuffs?
Yeah. But more so, what's even funnier, I'm still pretty into fashion, like as far as like streetwear is concerned. Mm-hmm. And a lot of like the bigger designers, like a Balenciaga or Raf Simons, are coming back with 90s gear, and it's all based, like, for example, Gosha Rabowski, I can't even pronounce Russian very well, especially after 2 beers and some edibles. But Raf Simons' whole collection is a recent one, as well as, what's his name, Wang, anyways, is based on 90s rave.
Right.
And they're doing total 90s, big clunky, like 3-leveled shoes, but they're not using what we did back in the day, which is kind of funny. So in essence, everything's speeding along so quick and regurgitating. Well, it's been
20 years, right? Fashion tends to go in 20-year cycles, right? So, as much
Alexander Wang, that's
Alexander Wang. Yeah. So I mean, it's no surprise that some of that stuff is coming back. At the end of the day,
right on schedule.
Right on schedule, exactly. Kind of regret throwing all that stuff away.
But the thing is, no shit.
A 40 plus individual putting that stuff on kind of looks a little weird.
Well, that's the other thing.
You can pull it off when you're 21.
I love all that. Like, I like my clothes and whatnot, but at the same time, I'm not.
You got to dress your age.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's so many things come out and they're all big and baggy and oversized. I'm just like, I can't fucking buy that.
But we were all like 25 pounds later back then.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we were sticking bones back then. But at the same time, you just look like, even the thought of dressing like that drives me.
No, and you wouldn't, because it's the same reason I don't put Blondissima in my hair anymore and strip out all the color,
this
right?
This is true.
I got a business to run. I got clients to talk to, right? I mean, it's there's a point where you grow up and just, we do what we do because we love the music. It doesn't mean we have to look like our customers.
Here's another thing, actually. What do you think of the reprint? I've talking to people, for example, is like, oh, I like house music. And then I've actually been to parties at people's houses where they go like, I go put on some house music or something. Yeah. Because it's just all this newer hip hop, trappy kind of sounding stuff, which is fine. But I'm like, I need something a bit more to push me along. Yeah. And the next thing you know, you've got Calvin Harris mixed with some other top Rihanna. 10. Yeah. And I'm just like, this is not house music. But to the newer generation, that's house music. So it's an interesting, as a promoter, and your passion being the music, It's kind of like now where everything's shifted in a way where you don't want to be stuck in a capsule, but you kind of have to
Well,
be.
here's this theory that I've had for a long time, and so somewhat how I live by, and when we're doing what we do, is there's always a funnel of people coming into dance music.
Entry level.
Yep. And so the entry level, let's call it the gateway. Music that allows people to come in. That changes by generation, but it's always easily accessible music, right? It's either something that pisses your parents off, like dubstep was, and the masses of 19-year-olds get into it, or it's like, the hip-hop guy is not going to become a deep techno fan overnight. It's just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So you need that funnel, and that was what Digital Dreams was, is we had the big EDM funnel at the top, and you would come in to see, the
at the bottom
the
of the funnel,
Carnages and the Eric
at the
Princes.
funnels, there's their art department.
Yeah, then there's art department,
Refined.
and there's there's some trance, and there's some Andy C playing drum and bass.
Yeah.
So it's somewhat of an experience funnel, right? So at the top, the masses, and then as the funnel gets narrower and comes down, you get people who've now been going to parties for 2 or 3 years. Their tastes mature, they get more sophisticated in their musical knowledge, and they realize that this bubblegum pop that they got into first is not that cool and is not that good of music.
Formulated. It's more formulated.
Music, right?
Yeah.
And the DJs aren't really doing what DJs are supposed to do up there, and they're pushing play and all that kind of stuff. But
That's another fucking story altogether.
But if it had not been for that gateway, no one's coming from hip hop or rock or anything else and going into Detroit techno. It's just not going to happen. So if the funnel is necessary to do what we do, and right now the way things are, that funnel has narrowed considerably over the last couple of years because the EDM bubble has popped.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. But that has removed the top part of the funnel.
The feeding.
So now what you have is a generation of kids in the scene, let's just say going out scene, who are listening to gangster rap and hip hop and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But it's not feeding into these other genres of dance music per se.
But at the same time, it's kind of crossed over. Electronic dance music, without not EDM, but like there's elements of techno and house
there is.
in the hip hop now.
But I feel like what they're doing is they're going to events and concerts and clubs that are just like that, and they never experience it and everything. And then if they go to let's use the example using before, Les Veld, it's gone more hip hop over the last couple of years. Yeah. That's all they experience, and they think that's what it is. So
until they accidentally end up at Coda one day.
Exactly. And unfortunately in Toronto, and I don't want to sound like the old guy who was so much better back then, but in Toronto, and I'm sure
it was different. It was different back then.
We had 100 nightclubs, right? We had 100 nightclubs around Toronto, and there was a variety of things going on. Now there's 20, maybe
there's not
10.
That many bigger nightclubs.
There's very few. There's bottle service clubs, which are all hip hop, and there's a few dance clubs, but there isn't enough variety out there to create this next generation who are going to move into the more sophisticated sounds. So the funnel is considerably narrower now, and just literally in the last year to 2 years, than it was 5 years ago.
Do you feel it's dripping or it's been shut off?
It's just like I often say, and I think I said earlier, the next generation tends not to do what the generation ahead of them did. So if 5 years ago or 10 years ago, everybody was getting into EDM and all this kind of stuff, their younger siblings are not going to go in that direction. They're going to go in another direction. That's just the way life is. So there is this sort of
plus there's a whole industry pushing guitar rock.
Yeah, there's a variety of things. Like I said, the wave has gone like this, and in I guess to our advantage at this point, we have this bubble, just like baby boomer bubble, moving through dance music right now, and now they're all pushing 30. Half of them have dropped off because they've just gotten older and they don't go out very much anymore. But you still got 50% of these people who came in through the top of the funnel.
They want to go out. They want to do
into
things.
This really cool underground music, which we're now promoting in these destination festivals. So it gives us an opportunity.
Thank God they're in their 30s because now they can afford to travel.
Now, well, hey, if you're doing a festival in Barbados, you're not selling. It's not spring break.
No, it's also a good time. So
but also, when you're 30 to 50, let's say, and if I'm closer to 50 than I am to 30, and if that age, you don't necessarily want to hang out with a bunch of 19-year-olds in a field.
You absolutely don't.
No. So this is
26-year-olds.
This is your chance, and something like this, whether it was BPM or SXM or us or even Ibiza to a degree, this is where you can go hang out with people that are your age that are into cool stuff. Like I said, unfortunately, what's going to happen next, nobody really knows, because this bubble is moving along. So we've got another 5 years.
We've already been through this. We already know what happens.
Yeah,
it's the mistakes you make or the mistakes you don't make.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. the scene in the 90s, as glorious as it was, and everybody wishes it was the same, and the throwback mentality of it, right, are kind of one of the reasons the scene died, from what I can tell through our company, Life Force, which was Dos Sours and Renegades, was the cost of the DJs got ridiculous.
Yep.
And there's no hidden reason why. It's pretty obvious that we had some corporate sponsors come in, and just so happened one of my partners was the guy who was working with them, who ended up work for them, and just had this crazy cigarette money to throw around. So you had guys that were getting paid, which was reasonable at the time, $2,500 to $5,000 to come play. We're now getting offered $10,000 in first class flights and first class accommodations, and just playing a small club or something like that. So the cost of the DJ started to go up, and it just didn't make business sense to continue doing what we were doing.
Not. Especially the prices we were able to charge.
So I think at one point the most we paid was like, what did we pay Paul Oakenfold for that one win? It was like close to 50 grand or something.
50 grand, I think 40 or 50 grand.
Okay, so that was in like 97, 98, right? Flash forward to Digital Dreams. What was the most money you ever paid?
$250,000 US.
To
well, hey, I'm not gonna talk about contracts, but let's.
This is true. This is true. That's fair.
Let's just say, not only were we paying $250,000 for one or two artists, but most everybody else that was playing those stages was 50 to 150.
Yes.
So we had a couple hundreds, we had 150, we had a 250, and I think this, to answer your question about things getting more expensive, this current generation was able to experience these events a little longer than they would have back in our day. Yeah. Because the independent promoter is not going to pay those wages.
Well, this is the first
AEG,
corporate, full-on corporate. Yeah,
so it's given it almost false economics.
Yeah, 100%. That was what I was getting at.
We would have been gone long ago.
Oh yeah, but or it would never happen. Actually,
it would never happen. It never got that high. But the fact is, you've got vertically integrated companies like Live Nation who have Ticketmaster and venues and all these kind of things, all top to bottom. They're making all the liquor money and everything else. So they artificially keep the prices high longer than they would have in a more independent market. Is that good, bad? It's just reality.
It's just how it goes.
It's just how it goes, right? I mean, I think an interesting way of looking at this is when I first started throwing raves back in the day, our goal back then, when nobody listened to this music other than like this really small group of people, and the same people kind of went out on a pretty regular basis, our goal was to bring this music to the world. Raves are so fun and loving and Plur and all this kind of stuff. And we really wanted to get everybody to understand what we were into because we thought it was the coolest thing ever. We won. We did it. We got it. We did exactly that. And then as a result, it became pop music, and then the corporate interests came in and dominated. Now, is that good or bad? It's really your perspective.
It's just how it goes.
It's just how it goes.
Yeah. What are some of your what are some of the best memories you have from let's say back in the day?
It's interesting that
aside from a lot of friends.
Yeah, I mean, obviously
still have, right?
I mean, like I said, we talked about before. I mean, the fact that people come up to me on the street every week and talk about experiences that they had 10, 20 years ago is cool. But I mean, you're not gonna pay the rent on that. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you move on. But it's pretty awesome that someone recognizes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100% with that. It's funny. I kind of look back, and a lot of the things I remember the most were things where we had almost shared adversity, right? I mean, where we had everything was against us, and somehow we prevailed. Do you remember when that guy from Utopia tried to that one New Year's party we did, and buddy so on New Year's typically we would get all the companies together that was able to work together, right, and throw a New Year's event, and it wasn't about money; it was just trying to do something right, because in the past some promoters had come along and put out events flyers for events, promoting an event that they actually didn't have DJs booked for, and it just affected us all in the wrong way. Because no internet, no one really knew the difference, and no one could check. It's like a bad contractor, you know what I mean? Not all contractors are bad. But there was this one time where this one company we ended up working with because we just wanted to get rid of someone else trying to do something on the same night. Yeah. It was Utopia. And he threatened, what was the whole focus? He threatened the Mafia. Yeah. Was good. No, the Mafia wanted to take over the event, and there was this whole elaborate story. And we ended up calling his bluff in the end.
And it turned out he was just a cab driver.
Right.
That had somehow borrowed money from a bunch of people. But when you're in your mid-20s, you know what I mean? You have to take stuff like that seriously.
And there's no way to check.
No, really. Without going to the cops. And the cops are going to go, oh, wait, you're planning on doing a rave?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
Back then, all the cops thought that if you threw a rave, you're a promoter, you were a drug dealer.
yeah. Yes.
That's just what they thought.
So I mean, here's a perfect example of the shared adversity kind of situation where it's obviously seared in my brain. So we had one of the WAMFs that we did in Bob Cajun. We actually did two there. So the first year that we did it, we only did it on this particular piece of land because
Indian, wasn't it?
No, Hell's Angels.
Hell's Angels, okay.
And we had planned the event in Cayuga, if anybody remembers Cayuga.
Speedway.
Yeah. And for whatever reason, the owner was shady, and we ended up losing the venue literally 3 weeks before WAMF. I mean, this is a 3-day event with probably
When you're
10,000
promoting for 3 months.
Yeah,
for an
promoting for
event.
3 to 6 months, and you got 10,000 people coming. We're going to live there for 3 days. And all of a sudden, we lose the venue. Luckily, in those days, we never told anybody where it was, so nobody knew the difference on that. So someone says, "Hey,
So true.
I know these guys up in Bob Cajun. You know, they're Hell's Angels, but you know they own a lot of land, and you know they're not going to wear their patches, and they don't have to be the drug dealers and all those kind of things." I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, great, let's do it.
Good, because I don't want them to
Yeah.
be.
So obviously we didn't go through all the hoops of getting the permission from the town and all this kind of stuff. And so obviously the combination of rave in small town coupled with Hell's Angels was like fucking
Perfect
headlines,
Yeah, perfect headlines.
right? So it got to a point.
Drug party by Hell's Angels.
It got to a point on Friday where we had opened the gates at noon, and we actually were in court during the time that the gates had opened, and about 3,000 or 4,000 people had got in. And
Someone Will is helping you guys?
Yeah. And we're in court, and they're trying to get an injunction against the event, and we're obviously fighting it. We have our lawyer up there, and in the end, at about 6 o'clock at night, we don't win, and there's an injunction against the event. So we go back to the festival. We have to close the gates at this point. And the line is building up and building up and building up. At some point, there was about 5,000 people in line.
Yeah.
And I remember Jim Junkins from CTV News is standing out at the front gate, and I'm watching, and he's like, you know, it's 10 o'clock at night, and you know, obviously
Trying to be salacious.
It's been shut down for 5 hours, and he's like, and it looks like the rave is over, right? And then he shuts down, and they get in the van and they drive off, right? And some point around this time, I'm huddling with a good friend of mine who was also a lawyer. And we're going through the injunction, and he realizes that the injunction is against me personally and not against the event itself. Mm-hmm. So I go off to one of our co-promoters on the event, who I believe may or may not have had insurance, and
Signed it over to him.
You pay me $1. This is now your event. And I literally had to leave the property at that point because I wasn't allowed to be there because there was an injunction against me. And I remember over the course of the weekend, I'd have to be smuggled in under blankets in the back of a pickup truck and all these kind of things. But at that point, we had come up with this plan. We handed it to the police, and literally within half an hour, this helicopter lands in the middle of the rave, and it's the Solicitor General of Ontario. And he gets out of the helicopter, and he comes over to me, and he's like, "If you don't shut this down right now, you're going to jail." And that was the point where we sold it to somebody for $1.
Yeah.
And I was just like, my life is over, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, led to this sale. And so for the rest of the weekend, I literally had to be smuggled in and out of this party. And the party went on because of the fact that we sold it. They didn't have an injunction against this person. It was a weekend. The courts were closed. Like, you know, those weird shared adversity kind of stories where you come out on the other end, you're like, holy fuck, I could have lost everything. Lost my condo, lost my car, lost my everything. And somehow we pulled through. So, you know, and it ended up being a great party. And it, you know, it was one of those things just like the tornado that, you know, there's this shared adversity. And then at the end of the day, make or break, at the end of the day, you've come through it, and it makes you want to do it even better the next time.
Absolutely. I think this is a good point to actually end the podcast.
All right. Well, there's lots more stories, so hopefully we'll get to do it again.
All right. Well, Ryan Kruger, thanks for coming on. I'm Steve Mealing, and Chad has left us already, but thanks for tuning into the City Podcast. You can reach us on Instagram at the City Podcast. Same with Twitter. And I think that's it. I don't do social media. Chad does. I'm not even on Facebook.
Thank you very much for having me.
Always.
Great time.
And we'll definitely see if we can do something at the Eventually party.
Nice.
Cheers. I don't...